Hello everyone, John AG here. Welcome back to my channel Aurex. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, in this channel you will find the real information, real market updates that everyone cannot tell you. So please subscribe this channel and love you all of my subscribers for your support. And please watch this video till the very end because YouTube will not push my videos to more people. Look closely at what is sitting right here on my desk. To the absolute vast majority of the population walking the streets outside today, this is nothing more than a shiny novelty. It is a paperweight. It is a relic from a bygone era that our modern, hyper-digitized, digitally obsessed society has convinced us we no longer need. But I need you to listen to me very carefully right now, because the decisions you make in the next few months will dictate the financial survival of your family for the next 3 generations. I bought this specific 1 troy ounce coin of 0.999 fine silver just a few days ago for exactly $70. I walked into my local independent bullion dealer, a small, quiet shop tucked away from the bustling, distracted masses, handed over physical cash, and walked out with this physical asset. This is not just a piece of metal. This is a profound, undeniable teacher. We are sitting here in May of 2026, and the world is accelerating toward a financial precipice at a speed that is truly terrifying to behold if you understand the underlying math. You and I are living through an era of profound economic distortion, a time when the very definition of money has been twisted, manipulated, and weaponized against the working and middle classes of the world. And yet, the mainstream financial media, the suited anchors on your television, and the algorithms feeding you endless streams of short-form distractions are entirely silent about the reality of what is unfolding. They want you distracted. They want you focused on the latest political theater, the newest digital token, or the endless cycle of manufactured outrage. They do not want you paying attention to the quiet, systematic transfer of real, tangible wealth that is happening right under your nose. Let us rewind the tape for a moment and look at the brutal, undeniable reality of the 2026 silver market. Because if you do not understand the history of the last 6 months, you will be completely blindsided by what is coming in the next 6. Do you remember the sheer, unadulterated madness of January 2026? I remember it vividly. I remember the emails, the frantic direct messages, the sheer panic in the voices of people who had never once considered buying a precious metal in their entire lives. We watched silver do something the paper market manipulators thought was impossible. We watched it completely sever its chains, breaking through decades of heavily coordinated suppression, and surge with the violence of a quilled spring finally released. We watched it hit a staggering, breathtaking all-time high of $121.64 per ounce on January 29th. The psychological energy in the market was explosive. The fear of missing out, the primal, desperate human emotion of FOMO, took complete control of the retail market. People were liquidating their retirement accounts, taking out personal loans, and blindly throwing capital at mining stocks and physical bullion at the absolute top of the market. Why? Because human beings are biologically and sociologically hardwired to find safety in the herd. When everyone is running in one direction, our deepest instincts tell us to run with them. We assume the crowd knows something we do not. But in the realm of global finance, by the time the crowd realizes what is happening, the trap has already been set, and the smart money is already quietly walking out the back door with the profits. And then, exactly as history dictated it would, the gravity of algorithmic manipulation took hold. The institutions, the central banks, the massive bullion banks that trade billions of dollars in paper derivative contracts without ever touching a single physical ounce of metal, orchestrated a brutal, calculated takedown. They flooded the COMEX and the LBMA with synthetic paper silver. They spoofed the markets, triggered the stop losses of the over-leveraged retail traders, and engineered a cascading 40% correction. They broke the spirit of the very people who had just woken up to the reality of the fiat currency collapse. And that brings us to this week. That brings us to my $70 purchase. When I walked into that coin shop, the manic, electric energy of January was completely dead. The shop was silent. The dealer looked worn down, exhausted from dealing with retail investors who were capitulating, selling their physical silver back to him at a massive loss because they could not handle the emotional pain of the volatility. They bought at $121 in a state of pure, unthinking panic, and they were selling to him in the 70s in a state of pure, crushing despair. They did not understand what they were holding. They were chasing a fleeting price tag, entirely blind to the underlying eternal value. This is the first and perhaps the most devastating lesson this $70 coin has taught me about human psychology and the alchemy of our modern debt-based system. We have been deeply, systematically conditioned to confuse price with value. We look at a piece of paper or a digital digit on a glowing screen, and we call it money. But what is money, truly? Strip away the banking terminology, strip away the Federal Reserve press conferences, and strip away the complex academic theories. At its absolute, fundamental core, money is simply a mechanism for storing your human energy. Think deeply about your life. Think about the alarm clock going off at 6 a.m. Think about the commute in the freezing rain or the sweltering heat. Think about the hours you spend away from your spouse, away from your children, away from the passions and dreams that actually make your life worth living. You trade your finite, irreplaceable time on this earth, your blood, your sweat, your physical and mental exhaustion, in exchange for a currency. You are storing your life force in that currency, trusting that when you need to retrieve that energy to feed your family, to put a roof over your head, or to secure your retirement, the energy will still be there. But the system is fundamentally broken, and it is entirely rigged against you. Every single time the central banks of the Western world press a button and conjure trillions of new currency units into existence to fund unpayable sovereign debts, to bail out failing banking institutions, or to finance endless overseas conflicts, they are not creating new wealth. Wealth cannot be printed. Energy cannot be printed. What they are doing is diluting the purchasing power of the currency you already hold. They are reaching directly across space and time, slipping their hands into your bank account, and siphoning away your stored human energy. It is a silent, invisible tax that requires no legislation and no vote, and it is bleeding the global middle class completely dry. Look at what $70 buys you in the real economy today, in 2026. Because of the compounding, destructive effects of the inflation we've endured over the last 6 years, $70 barely covers a modest, basic dinner for two at a mid-tier restaurant. It buys you a mere fraction of a grocery cart filled with highly processed, shrinking packages of food. It might fill up 3/4 of the gas tank in your vehicle, depending on the state or country you live in. Your currency is evaporating. But when I hold this 1-ounce silver coin, I am holding something entirely different. I am holding the physics of money. I am holding an element forged in the extreme heat and pressure of dying supernovas, an asset that has been recognized as unquestionable, uncounterfeitable wealth by every single major civilization for the last 5,000 years. It cannot be printed by a desperate politician. It cannot be hacked by a malicious state actor. It cannot be permanently devalued by a stroke of a central banker's pen. It is a profound, physical rebellion against a financial system that demands you work harder, longer, and faster every single year just to maintain the exact same standard of living. Yet, the financial media refuses to discuss the second, equally critical lesson: the brutal, inescapable mathematics of 21st century industrial demand. We are not just talking about money, we are talking about the very building blocks of the modern technological age. We are living through an industrial choke point of unprecedented proportions, a structural collision between an infinite exponential demand for advanced technology and a deeply finite, rapidly depleting geological supply. Look around you. Look at the massive, globally coordinated and government-mandated transition toward green energy infrastructure. Look at the absolute explosion in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the staggering expansion of hyperscale data centers across the globe. We are consuming electricity and transmitting data at a rate that human history has never witnessed. And what is the single, irreplaceable common denominator? What is the one elemental key that unlocks this entire technological future? It is physical silver. Silver is the most electrically conductive metal on the entire periodic table. Silver is the most thermally conductive metal in existence, crucial for preventing the highly advanced microchips in AI servers from melting down under immense computational loads. Silver is the most reflective substance known to modern science, making it the absolute, non-negotiable core ingredient in the manufacturing of photovoltaic solar panels. There is no substitute. Copper is not conductive enough. Gold is far too expensive. Graphene is not commercially viable at scale. If you want a green energy grid, if you want an AI-driven future, if you want electric vehicles in every driveway, you absolutely must have physical silver. And here is the terrifying reality of the 2026 market that the paper traders on Wall Street are desperately trying to ignore. We are currently in our 6th consecutive year of a massive, structural, global silver deficit. For 6 long years, the human race has consumed significantly more physical silver in industrial applications, jewelry, and investment demand than the entire global mining sector has been able to pull out of the crust of the earth. Above-ground refined stockpiles are being relentlessly, systematically drained. Mining production has been entirely stagnant, flatlining for over a decade. Why? Because you cannot simply turn a key and open a new silver mine. It takes 10 to 15 years of exploration, environmental permitting, capital raising, and heavy infrastructure development to bring a single new mine online. Furthermore, over 70% of the world's silver is not mined directly. It is mined as a byproduct of digging for zinc, lead, and copper. If the global economy slows down and demand for base metals drops, the supply of byproduct silver plummets right alongside it, regardless of how desperate the tech and solar industries are for the metal. The paper markets on the COMEX can play their digital games. They can trade hundreds of unbacked synthetic paper contracts for every one real, physical ounce sitting in a vault in London or New York. They can artificially suppress the spot price down to $70 to try and shake the weak hands out of the market. But they cannot print the physical metal. You cannot build a solar panel with a paper derivative contract. You cannot build a next-generation NVIDIA AI processor with an ETF share. The massive industrial giants, the tech conglomerates, the automobile manufacturers, the sovereign defense contractors, they do not want exposure to paper price action. They need the physical, raw, tangible metal delivered to their manufacturing facilities, or their entire multi-billion-dollar supply chains grind to an absolute catastrophic halt. When this paper illusion finally breaks, and the laws of physics and mathematics guarantee that it must, the scramble for physical metal will trigger a price discovery event that will make the $121 peak of January look like a microscopic anomaly on a much larger historic chart. This directly feeds into the third profound lesson, the massive tectonic shift on the global geopolitical chessboard. The year 2026 has been entirely defined by the rapid, aggressive acceleration of global financial fragmentation. The world has broken apart. The unipolar dominance of the Western financial system, underpinned by the American dollar, is actively, visibly collapsing in real time. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the dozens of newly admitted allied nations stretching across the global South and the Middle East, are no longer merely debating the theoretical concept of de-dollarization. They are executing it with ruthless, calculated efficiency. We are witnessing the final, definitive unwinding of the petrodollar system that has allowed the West to export its inflation and maintain an artificially high standard of living since the early 1970s. We are watching Eastern central banks hoard physical gold at levels that defy all historical precedent, dumping Western treasury bonds to fund the acquisition of hard, tangible monetary reserves. But while the headlines scream about gold, a much quieter, far more aggressive stealth accumulation is happening with silver. In the East, particularly in nations like India and China, silver is not viewed merely as a volatile industrial commodity to be day traded on a smartphone application. It is viewed as deeply entrenched, generational wealth. It is the money of the people. It is given as a sacred gift at weddings, it is passed down from grandparent to grandchild, and it is held as a vital, necessary insurance policy against the inevitable devaluation of sovereign fiat currencies. While Western retail investors, deeply traumatized by the engineered price smash from $121 down to $70, eagerly liquidate their physical holdings in a panic, the East is standing there with open arms and massive capital reserves, gladly absorbing every single ounce of physical metal the West is foolish enough to surrender. This $70 purchase taught me that we are caught squarely in the middle of the greatest wealth transfer in modern human history. It is a wealth transfer from the impatient to the patient. It is a wealth transfer from those who trust paper promises to those who trust physical reality. And most importantly, it is a wealth transfer from the financialized, debt-burdened economies of the West straight into the secure, sovereign vaults of the industrial East. We as a society are far too distracted by the blinding noise of social media, the endless, toxic polarization of our political theater, and the flashing green and red numbers of our digital portfolios to realize that the fundamental bedrock of global economic power is actively shifting right beneath our feet. Real, tangible assets are draining out of the West. When you make the conscious decision to convert your depreciating fiat currency into an ounce of physical silver, you are stepping completely outside of a failing, rigged paradigm. You are actively aligning your personal family wealth with the undeniable, unstoppable reality of a newly multipolar world. And this leads me to the deepest, most intensely personal lesson I want to share with you today. The brutal psychology of the herd and the extreme emotional fortitude required to secure true independence. Investing, wealth preservation, and financial survival in 2026 are not primarily about spreadsheets, charts, or mathematical formulas. They are almost entirely about emotional control. They are about possessing the rare, uncomfortable ability to endure the psychological pain of standing entirely apart from the herd. When silver was soaring to $121 in January, Everyone wanted a piece of it. It felt intoxicating. It felt safe because the entire world seemed to be validating the decision. The mainstream news was talking about it, influencers were making videos about it, and your neighbors were bragging about their paper gains. But true wealth is never, ever built by chasing the euphoric madness of the crowd. By the time the mainstream media is telling you to buy an asset, the insiders have already engineered the top, and you are simply arriving to provide the exit liquidity for the billionaires. Conversely, when the price was artificially crushed back into the 70s, the same people who were euphoric became violently terrified. They felt stupid. They felt betrayed by the market. They allowed their deeply rooted emotional fear of short-term loss to entirely override their logical understanding of the long-term macroeconomic fundamentals. They sold their physical silver back to the dealers, taking a massive permanent loss, simply because the pain of uncertainty, the pain of looking at a red number on a screen, was too overwhelming for their psychology to bear. Holding this single $70 coin requires genuine emotional armor. It requires you to look dead in the eye of a mainstream financial apparatus that constantly mocks precious metals as barbarous relics or dead money, and have the quiet, unshakable conviction to say, "You are lying, you are mathematically wrong, and history will prove it." It requires immense courage to be early. It requires profound mental strength to be a contrarian. It is deeply uncomfortable to watch your peers heavily leverage themselves in the digital casino, bragging about their phantom, unrealized gains in speculative assets, while your physical wealth sits quietly, unmoving, in a secure vault or a hidden safe. It is agonizingly difficult to maintain your conviction when massive, multi-billion-dollar algorithmic trading bots smash the paper price of your asset by 10% at 3 a.m. on a random Tuesday, just to trigger margin calls. It is profoundly isolating to understand the absolute fragility of the global debt structure, while your own family members, friends, and colleagues remain blindly addicted to the comforting illusion that the government and the central banks have everything under perfect control. But I am here to tell you, looking directly at the historical record of every single fiat currency that has ever existed on this planet, that true generational wealth, the kind of wealth that survives currency resets, the kind of wealth that endures sovereign defaults, hyperinflationary spirals, and geopolitical wars, is built exclusively in the quiet, lonely, terrifying moments of deep conviction. It is built by identifying absolute fundamental value when the rest of the world is completely blind to it, acquiring it when it is out of favor and manipulated, and holding on to it with hands of absolute steel. Why does any of this matter to you as you sit there watching this video today? It matters because we are rapidly running out of time to prepare our families for what is mathematically inevitable. I want you to take a deeply honest look at the world your children and your grandchildren are inheriting right now in 2026. They are being handed a world that is suffocating under the crushing weight of hundreds of trillions of dollars of global sovereign debt. They are being handed a world where inflation is no longer discussed as a transitory supply chain issue, but has become a permanent, devastating structural feature of the economy, deliberately designed to quietly wipe out the purchasing power of their wages. They are inheriting a world with a basic, fundamental human dream of owning a simple home, raising a family on a single income, and saving for a dignified retirement has been completely, ruthlessly destroyed by the hyper-financialization of housing and the perpetual debasement of the currency. Our society has completely lost its collective mind regarding the true definition of wealth. We have been brainwashed into believing that wealth is a six-figure digit on a banking app that can be frozen by a government decree. We have been conditioned to believe that wealth is a heavily financed, depreciating luxury vehicle sitting in the driveway. We have been told that wealth is a massive portfolio of wildly overvalued technology stocks entirely propped up by the artificial liquidity injections of a panicked central bank. But none of that is real. It is all an illusion of leverage. True wealth is absolute independence. True wealth is the unshakable security of knowing that no matter what happens in the banking sector, no matter what happens to the fragile digital grid, and no matter how desperately a bankrupt government tries to inflate away its debts, the physical manifestation of your life's hard work cannot be stolen, frozen, or destroyed by a printing press. This 1-ounce silver coin, purchased for $70 during a moment of orchestrated market despair, is a tiny, heavy anchor of absolute truth in an endless, swirling ocean of financial lies. It serves as a constant physical reminder that every single empire in the long, bloody history of human civilization that has chosen the path of currency debasement has eventually, inevitably, collapsed under the weight of its own arrogance. From the frantic clipping of the silver Roman denarius by desperate emperors, to the tragic wheelbarrow-pushing hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic, to the quiet, insidious erosion of the modern global reserve fiat system, the story has never, ever changed. The mathematical end is always identically the same. The unbacked paper currency eventually returns to its true intrinsic value of absolute zero, while physical gold and physical silver remain standing in the ashes, reasserting their dominance as the only true, honest money the world has ever known. As I sit here today, feeling the weight of this metal in my palm, I do not see a mere $70 investment vehicle. I see a fully decentralized, globally recognized, counterparty risk-free insurance policy against the catastrophic arrogance of central economic planners. If the institutional manipulators decide to dump billions of dollars of paper contracts tomorrow and drive the price of this physical silver down to $50 an ounce, I will not feel an ounce of panic. I will feel profound gratitude for the discount, and I will aggressively exchange more of my dying fiat currency for real, tangible metal. And if the geopolitical powder keg finally ignites next month, breaking the paper markets entirely and sending the true physical price of silver skyrocketing past $200, $300, or $500 an ounce, I will not celebrate or dance in the streets. I will simply look at the absolute devastation of the broader economy and recognize, with a heavy heart, that the fiat currency system has finally lost the remainder of its purchasing power, just as history promised it would. My message to you in this video is not traditional financial advice. I am not a suited advisor telling you exactly what percentage of your portfolio to allocate or exactly what day of the week to execute your trades. I am speaking to you simply as a human being who sees the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, begging you to wake up from the digital slumber. I am begging you to turn off the mainstream financial noise and begin ruthlessly educating yourselves about the 5,000-year history of money, the undeniable mathematics of inflation, and the fragile, overextended reality of global technological supply chains. I am asking you to take a hard, unfiltered, brutally honest look at your life, your savings, and your strategy for the future, and ask yourself one simple, terrifying question. Are you holding real, tangible, indestructible wealth? Or are you merely holding an empty, unbacked promise from a government that is drowning in an ocean of inescapable debt? Do not let the engineered psychological volatility of 2026 shake you out of your position of strength. Do not let the coordinated media narrative convince you that up is down, that debt is prosperity, that endless credit is wealth, and that physical, historical assets are obsolete. The advanced, industrialized, technology-driven world simply cannot survive without physical silver. The global monetary order is violently rotating away from Western debt and back toward Eastern hard assets. The brief historical window of opportunity to exchange your rapidly depreciating paper currency for physical, undeniable reality is closing tighter and tighter, ounce by ounce, day by day. Take absolute, uncompromising responsibility for your own financial sovereignty. Be deeply patient. Be ruthlessly disciplined. And above all else, do not follow the blind, panicked herd over the edge of the financial cliff. Looking deeply into the camera lens, the silver coin remains perfectly illuminated on the dark wood, a stark symbol of everything just spoken. Thank you for spending your most valuable, irreplaceable asset, your time, with me today. If this message resonated with your core, if it brought you some clarity and sanity in a world actively trying to drown you in noise, please hit the like button right now. Leave a comment down below. I want to hear your boots-on-the-ground reality. What are you seeing in your local communities? Are you finding physical silver at your local dealers, or are the shelves completely bare? What premiums are they charging you over the paper spot price? Let's build a powerful, decentralized community of awake, aware, and prepared individuals right here in the comment section. Remember, the mainstream YouTube algorithms absolutely do not want this kind of reality-based, anti-fiat discussion reaching the broader masses. They want us marginalized. Sharing this video with your family, your friends, and your networks is the only actual way we break through their digital suppression and help others prepare for what is coming. Stay strong in your convictions. Stay focused on the long-term reality. Keep relentlessly stacking your knowledge, keep acquiring tangible assets, and keep protecting your families at all costs. This is John A.G., signing off from Aurex. I will see you in the next Real Market Update.